Hello fellow 3D enthusiasts, my name is Ian, and today I'm going to show you how I created this effect. So basically I've got to do some crazy re-entry atmospheric effects. Kind of looks like the front of the canister is on fire a little bit, and so I'm going to show you how I did that today. Now to start out, we had a scene like this, and this is just a super basic setup of a camera that's looking at a kind of wide smoke simulation on a transparent background. And I'll go into the specifics of this in a second here, but basically what I did was I rendered this out as an image sequence, which I then kind of wrapped around the front of the canister on a plane. So let's talk about the specifics of this MantaFlow simulation real quick. So I've got my emitter object here, which if we go into Simulation tab, you can see I've checked fluid, set that to be flow, smoke, and inflow. So those are the basic settings that you're going to want. Of course, all this is up to your preference, I believe. I don't think I've changed anything there. Now for the domain settings, I've got a resolution of 100. Nothing else here has changed. I baked that, and then I also turned on dissolve and set that to a value of 5. And I also enabled noise, which has an up-res factor of 2, and you can see the strength and scale are a little bit different from what they are by default. I also baked that. And of course, I've got my cache set up here. I started out on frame 150 because at that point the smoke has actually gotten started. So if we go to frame 0, you can see that's all that craziness going on, but then it starts in earnest here, and this is what the animation looks like. I've got a few more things that affect it, one of them being a turbulence force here. That's got not a whole lot of strength on it, but it affects it a little bit. And I've also got a wind force here that kind of blows it up. I've also got my lamp set up here, flat lighting. It's not too exciting. If you go to film, you can check transparent, and that will make your background of the smoke render transparent, so we don't have our skybox and all that. So once I rendered this image sequence out, I'm going to show you what I did real quick. I have another video on this, but let's just do it for the heck of it, because it's always cool to know how to do this. So pretty much what we want to do is make it so that image sequence loops. And so I'm going to import that image sequence real quick. So here's the image sequence. I'm going to select everything with A, add image strip. We've got that little strip here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to put the cursor in the middle of it and hit K with that strip selected. And I'm just going to flip these around. Get a nice little bit of overlap there, and then we can set the end frame by just putting our cursor there, going set end frame. Alright, so now what we want to do, if I just put a color back here, we can kind of see what we're doing a little better. These two alpha maps are overlaid. You can see it kind of gets brighter for a second and then gets dimmer. That's just because these are overlaid on top of each other. So what I'm going to do is animate the alpha value, which you can find here, or the opacity. If I hit I over that, then I'm just going to go to this part and take that down to 0, so it's invisible now, and hit I. So this top strip will fade out, while this bottom strip, we're going to set to be 0 at the start, hit I, and then 1 at the end, hit I. So the top strip will fade out while the bottom strip fades in, and you can't really see the transition very well, so that's a good thing. And then when the end is just the first frame before the start, so it is completely seamless. Nice. So we can use this smoke animation to be cyclical, or whatever, however you say that, and that will be really nice for our crazy burning atmospheric effect. So don't forget to delete that color. We don't want that in the finished result, but you can pick a place to render your image strip out to. I'm going to set the compression down to 0 just because I don't want any artifacts in my smoke, and PNG images are important so you can have the alpha background. Alright, so here I am in my scene before I added the crazy fire cone on the front of this canister. It's going to be fairly simple to set this up. Let's just start by going into edit mode with this object selected here. I'm going to select this face here in the middle and just hit Control and plus. That'll grow our selection. And once we get to about here, that'll probably be good. Now I'm going to hit Shift D, duplicate that, And then I'm going to go P and separate the selection. And if we hit H, our main thing will disappear here. We can just select this real quick, scale it up, and go Alt H. I have automatic keyframes, that's messed up. Get out of here. Alright, Alt H. So our original thingy will reappear, and it looks like we just got this little cap here. And we want this to be our crazy fire smoke simulation thingy going on. So let's just go to materials and delete that and add a new one. And if we hop over to shading, eventually we're going to be wanting our smoke simulation animation to play over top of this, that looped image sequence that I talked about before. So let's actually just finish up this model real quick. I'm going to scale it SZZ to do the local Z axis. And I'm just going to scale that up a little bit like that. I kind of like the look of this, so I'm going to keep that. I might actually change this in my final render, because it's kind of cool to have that crazy jellyfish look. Alright, so let's also unwrap this while we're in edit mode, which I actually got out of, but so with this tiny little circular face, I'm going to scale that down so nobody can see it very well, and I'm going to hide that. And we also want the seam for this to be on the other side of the object. So I'm just going to scrub through the animation. From our camera view, we can see it's probably going to be on the other side of this. So something like this seam, whoop, not that one, this seam, I'm just hitting the 1, 2, and 3 keys to go between hitting vertex select and edge select and face select. So just 2 goes to edge select. We'll select this edge here and go Control E and mark seam. There we go. So let's select all of this, and then we'll go U and unwrap. So now that's all modeled and unwrapped. Let's just look at the unwrapping a little bit closer here. If we select all this with L, I'm going to rotate it by about 90 degrees here. So we get this outside edge to be up, and this inside edge we eventually want to be along the bottom here. So what I'm going to do to set that up is go, let's see, yeah, this works. So I've just went into edge select mode and the UV unwrap editor, and now I'm going to select this face and I'm going to make it a square. So let's select this and go S, X, and 0, and you see proportional editing is on, so let's turn that off real quick with O. So S, X, 0. Select the top and do the similar thing except on the y-axis, SY, 0. SY0, SX0. Okay, so this face all has right angles. Let's go into the face select mode, select the whole thing, and then we're just gonna go A to select everything, but this is our active selection. And if we hit spacebar and go follow active quads, you can just type in active if you want, and it's right here, follow active quads. Say OK, and that will just straighten all of it out. And this is really great. This is exactly what we want here. I'm going to scale that down and just kind of get it roughly in the shape here. So now if we go to shading and just let's set up our material a little bit here, and we'll be able to see better what we're working with. Okay, so what we're working with is basically nothing at the moment. So let's add in a few things. Let's go shader and hit M for mix shader. That's a good start. And we're also going to want an emission, so I'm going to hit E to get that real quick. And also a transparent. I don't remember how these go, but let's just plug them into the shader inputs. And then let's just plug this shader output into the surface input. Now, basically what we want to do is mix this emission with the transparent with our looping smoke simulation texture crazy thingy. So if we go texture and go image texture and find that loop, let's go open. I'm storing mine here. I'm going to hit A to select everything and open image. And it automatically senses we just got an image sequence going on here. It'll say the frames, hopefully. And we want to check cyclic and auto refresh. Now, if you've got Node Wrangler enabled, it's an add-on. You can find it up here. I feel like I say this all the time, but it's super handy. It'll save you a lot of time. And with that enabled, we can go Control and Shift and select the texture here. And then if we go into rendered view, we can see our animation texture thingy. So this isn't exactly what we want yet. We kind of want it to be brightest on the tip here and then fade out toward the edges and not really have this seam here. So if we go to UV editing, and actually it's already got the loop texture enabled. So let's just kind of place this a little bit better. If we select our little crazy cone thingy here and hit slash on the number pad, that will take us into a local view, which will only render that, which will make things faster. And let's just kind of grab this and move it down so that it's right on the start of the smoke. And if we scale it on the X, the seams on the edges won't be too bad. So something like that. It's getting better. If we just hold shift and right click and place our 2D cursor on the bottom here and select everything with A and then hit period and 2D cursor, that will scale everything around that rather than the origin of your vertices here. And now I'm just going to scale it on the Y so that you can see the smoke kind of covering the whole thing now. Alright, that is a good start. Another thing we might want to do is go Alt-H and then just select this little circle here. And we don't want this to stand out too much, so let's just plop it on a really bright part of our smoke texture and scale it down a bunch. There we go, it kind of blends in. Now the seam isn't perfect, so let's see if we can maybe scale this up on the Y, or scale it down on the X actually, so our seam looks a little bit better there. So I just had some issues real quick with the image sequence was turning pink, and so I just reloaded it right into this image texture. Not sure what was going on there. I think it might be the auto refresh kind of glitching out, but if we take this color output and drop it into the factor input, we can look at this, and that's beautifully not what we want. And the reason why this is just pure white is because our material doesn't actually have anything for alpha. So let's go blend mode, alpha blend. Now we got something a little bit better, but it's really not that exciting yet. So the way we can have a little bit more control over this is if we go converter and then color ramp. Now with this little guy here, you can go like this. It's okay. Let's take the strength and just see what happens when we turn that up. Nice. So you can mess with the strength and the control of the color ramp. That'll help out quite a bit. If we kind of take this back here and duplicate the color ramp and drop that there, you can put the color into the factor and color into the color of the emission. And then with this, we can get a nice kind of gradient on the color of our emission. So white comes first, then we can do like kind of a orangish yellow, which is kind of hard to see here on the gradient. Let's just go all the way bright with this. There we go. We can crank up the white a whole bunch. What I like to do with my color ramps sometimes is set them to ease, and that will kind of make things a little bit better blended. Same with this one. And if we go like this, you still can't see anything. That's exciting. You can't see anything at all. What the fruit? Okay, that's just because we need to keep this under control here. Alright, so this part comes down to kind of your artistic taste and what you'd like, but I think I'd like this to cover a little bit farther, and I've got this color ramp absolutely pegged at the moment, so what I'm going to do is just adjust the UVs slightly. If we go into... Wow, that's rubbish. For some reason my UV editor is kind of glitched out, but I'm just going to scale this down a little bit on the Y-axis. That way we've got a little bit more smoke covering it. That's good. Now if we go back here, everything has glitched out, so that's just fantastic. I'm going to try reloading my image sequence again. There we go, that fixed the problem. Cool. I don't know why it keeps doing that, it's kind of crazy. So the UVs are adjusted. It is covering a little bit more of the thing, so that's cool. Let's just make sure that it covers it a tiny bit more. And honestly, I don't want this black element here, so let's just go kind of darker and orangish here. That's kind of cool. I like that. And the more you turn this up, the crazier it'll get on the end here. That is really crazy. And if you scrub through the animation, you can see that is an animated image sequence going on there. So that's pretty cool. I think I'm going to scale it up a little bit on the local Z-axis, and then that will just kind of make it more cone-shaped, cover a little bit more of the tip. And this is really crazy bright at the moment. I have it set to like 18, so I might turn that down. So if we set this to like 5 or so, I kind of like the way that looks. And maybe I'll make this a little bit less crunchy. Nice. So that's good. Let's just grab it, move it back a little bit on its axis. And another thing I'm noticing here is the tip of this object is a little bit flat. So what we can do to fix this is just go Control 1. That'll give it a subsurf modifier and smooth it out a whole bunch. If we go into wireframe, you can see that's pretty nice now. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all of what I'm doing here. If you scroll back and forth with holding down Alt, you can kind of see the different animation. And it looks like it can be really good. I think we might need to back off a tiny bit so we don't get that crazy seam on the edge. But it is not bad. So the reason I'm using this crazy plane technique rather than just a smoke simulation out on the front is it'll make it a lot easier to control, because kind of with simulations, a lot of the time all bets are off and it's just really insane to work with. So when we create a smoke simulation and put it on top of a plane like this, we have a lot better of an idea of which way it'll flow and which way it'll go and things like that. So that's the technique. Now, if you found this useful and you'd like to see more things like it, there's a link in the description. When you click that link, it will sign you up for my email list, and I'll make sure that the first thing I send you is a pack of hydraulic kit bash elements for Blender, and those just give you kind of a jump start on detail for mechanical things that you're working on. And every week, I'll be keeping you up to date on the tutorial that I put out, and that's pretty much what you can expect from that. So that's pretty much it for this video. I'll catch you again later, and cheers!